Karen stood at the edge of the ancient, unpaved logging road, the midday sun barely penetrating the canopy of old-growth pines that swallowed the sky. The air here was different, thick with the scent of pine needle rot, damp earth, and something primal, almost metallic. She gripped the steering wheel of her rented SUV, the polished steel of her briefcase resting in the passenger seat, a jarring contrast to the wild, untamed wilderness of the Pacific Northwest. She was here because of Kate. Her sister, the one with the gypsy soul and the reckless heart, had been found dead 3 months ago. A fall, the local sheriff had ruled. Accidental. But Kate never had an accident in her life. She courted danger. She didn't stumble into it. Kate had disappeared into this forest years ago, chasing a life that Karen, the meticulous, city-bound architect, could never understand. Now, Karen was the executor of her modest estate, which consisted only of the sprawling, ramshackle cabin hidden deep within the woods. The cabin materialized out of the shadows, a structure of rough-hewn logs and moss-covered stone that looked less like a home and more like an integral part of the mountain itself. Karen cut the engine. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. A fine layer of dust coated everything inside. The air was stale, but beneath the mustiness, Karen caught a distinct, almost spicy aroma. Kate's signature sandalwood and patchouli perfume, mingling with a deeper, musky, animalistic scent that made the hairs on Karen's arms stand up. "It smells like a wild animal lives here," she murmured, dropping her bags in the main room. The living area was dominated by a huge stone fireplace and cluttered with books on herbalism, lunar cycles, and arcane symbols. It was chaotic, vibrant, and utterly Kate. Karen bypassed it all, drawn by a morbid need to face the room where her sister had last slept. Kate's bedroom was at the back, windowless, lit only by a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The queen-sized bed was the focal point, a heavy wooden frame covered in a crimson duvet. As Karen's eyes adjusted to the dim light, she stopped dead, her breath catching in her throat. There was something on the bed, not a photograph or a trinket, but a living, breathing creature, nestled into the center of the duvet like a dark, misplaced shadow. It was small, barely the size of a loaf of bread, and covered in a pelt of charcoal gray fur that seemed too thick for its size. It whimpered softly, a high, vulnerable sound, and lifted a tiny head. Karen's rational mind screamed, "Puppy!" But the animal's features defied that simple classification. Its snout was too defined, its ears too pointed, and its eyes, when they blinked open, were not the soft, dark eyes of a dog, but a brilliant, startling gold. And its paws, even in their minuscule form, were undeniably hands. She moved closer, slow and cautious, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The creature was a pup, but it wasn't canine. Its fur rippled, a wave of movement revealing lean, almost human limbs beneath. It was a perfect miniature hybrid, a flawless paradox. A werewolf pup. It stared up at her with unnerving intelligence. Then it stretched, curling its tiny clawed fingers into the silk of the duvet, and let out a soft, hungry cry. Karen's carefully constructed composure shattered. This was not grief. This was a secret. Kate hadn't just lived here. She had been part of something dangerous, something utterly unbelievable. Before Karen could process the impossibility, before she could scream or run, the front door of the cabin slammed shut with a reverberating thud. The sound was immediately followed by a heavy, deliberate tread across the wooden floorboards of the main room, moving steadily toward the bedroom. The creature on the bed let out a sharp, protective snarl, its gold eyes locking onto the door, its small, furry body trembling. Karen was trapped between the impossible pup and the unknown intruder. The air pressure in the room seemed to drop, the scent of earth and musk intensifying until it was suffocating. Someone knows I'm here, and whatever it was, it didn't sound like it was looking for a friendly chat.
Chapter 2. The Name and the Hunter's Moon. The footsteps paused just outside the bedroom door, the silence that followed more terrifying than any noise. Karen flattened her back against the wall, her eyes flicking from the pup to the handle, which was a brass deer's head, now vibrating slightly under the weight of a looming presence. She reached behind her, her fingers fumbling for a weapon, finding only a heavy, iron candle holder on the bedside table. "Who's there?" Her voice was thin, reedy, betraying none of the steely resolve she had perfected in her architectural boardrooms. No answer, only the shallow, heavy rhythm of breathing on the other side of the wood. The pup, no longer crying, shifted on the bed. It watched Karen, then the door, an odd sense of shared anticipation hanging between them. Its tiny, gold eyes held a profound depth that should not belong to any creature so small. Karen swallowed hard. "I'm calling the police. I have a weapon." A blatant lie, but necessary. "You do that, Karen." A voice rumbled back. It was deep, low, like the growl of an avalanche, and laced with an unnerving, sophisticated calm. "And I'll tell them you're harboring contraband." The door eased open with agonizing slowness. A man stood framed in the doorway, impossibly broad-shouldered and radiating a heat that Karen could feel from several feet away. He wasn't dressed like a hiker or a local delivery driver. He wore dark, tailored denim that hugged muscled thighs and a worn leather jacket over a black tee. His hair was midnight dark, slicked back from a sharply defined face, and his eyes were the color of glacial ice, currently narrowed in icy assessment. He was intimidatingly handsome, dangerously so. The kind of man who didn't just walk into a room. He dominated it. "You're Rowlin," Karen stated, recalling the name Kate's lawyer had mentioned. A local liaison, perhaps. The man's lips curled into a half-smile that held zero warmth. "You're the city sister. The practical one." His gaze swept past her, landing on the bed. The half-smile vanished, replaced by a storm cloud of possessive fury. "And that," he continued, his voice dropping to a lethal simmer, "is not yours to possess." He took a step into the room, and the musky scent of the cabin suddenly intensified, becoming pure testosterone and raw power. The pup let out a high-pitched, distressed yelp, scrambling off the bed and tucking itself behind a stack of pillows. "I don't know what that is, Rowlin, but I found it here." "It's a terrified animal," Karen challenged, raising the iron candle holder. "And you are trespassing." Rowlin ignored the threat, his eyes fixed on the bed, his jaw ticking. "It's a complication. One Kate was reckless enough to leave behind." He finally looked back at Karen, his icy gaze raking her body in a way that felt both clinical and profoundly invasive. "You need to leave, Karen. Sell the cabin. Forget Kate and everything you've seen here. The Hunter's Moon is 3 nights away. You don't want to be in the forest then." "Kate is dead, Rowlin. Did you kill her? Was she killed because of this?" She gestured wildly toward the hiding pup. His face hardened. "I didn't kill her, but her life was complicated. She was dealing with things you can't comprehend." He took a step closer, reducing the distance between them. "Give me the pup. Now." Before Karen could respond, a sudden, blinding flash of gold caught her attention. The pup, in its panic, had wriggled free and was attempting to climb the sheets. It lost its footing, tumbling onto the floor with a soft thump. A sound, not quite human, tore from Rowlin's throat, a low, guttural noise of distress. He lunged forward. Karen acted on pure instinct. She shoved her body between Rowlin and the vulnerable creature. No, the collision was immediate and staggering. Rowlin's massive body was a solid wall of unforgiving muscle. Karen's breath whooshed out of her, and she stumbled, falling backward onto the bed. Rowlin, thrown off balance, braced his hands on either side of her head, caging her in with the sheer force of his presence. The metallic, musky scent of him overwhelmed her. It was a fierce, demanding smell of rain and dominance. His face was inches from hers, his eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and something Karen couldn't quite decipher. It was a dark, consuming heat that seemed to promise both danger and salvation. The small pup, recovering from its fall, crawled to the edge of the bed and tentatively nuzzled Karen's hip, letting out a small, satisfied, almost purring sound. Rowlin's gaze dropped to the pup's affection. The fury in his eyes receded, replaced by a flicker of raw, possessive confusion. He leaned in closer to Karen's neck, taking a deep, shuddering inhalation. "What is that?" he whispered, his voice rough, no longer menacing, but utterly bewildered. "That smell on you." Karen shivered, the heat of his breath on her skin sending a confusing, electric jolt through her core. This wasn't just a trespasser. This was a hungry, dangerous beast, barely contained. Chapter 3: The Alpha's Demand. Rowlin's face was mere inches from Karen's, his breath a warm, minty rush across her mouth. The sheer physicality of the man, the cords of muscle in his neck, the heavy, fast beat of his heart against her shoulder, was overwhelming. He was a force of nature, contained in human skin. "You smell right," he rumbled, the word a low, vibrating chord that resonated deep within Karen's abdomen. "Get off me." Karen ground out, struggling beneath his weight, though the effort was futile. Her fear was rapidly being replaced by a confusing, white-hot rush of adrenaline and something far more dangerous, attraction. His eyes, those pale, glacial eyes, held a fierce, hungry intensity that mirrored the chaos she suddenly felt inside. The pup, sensing the shift in the room's energy, whined softly, scrambling up Karen's chest and nudging its small, furry head beneath her chin. The sight of the pup touching Karen seemed to break Rowlin's focus. He recoiled slightly, pushing himself up, but still looming over her. The possessive storm returned to his eyes. "It accepted your scent," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "This is impossible." "You're the impossible thing here, Rowlin," Karen retorted, sitting up quickly, pulling the pup protectively into her arms. The pup snuggled into her warmth, its small body surprisingly dense and radiating a strange, vital heat. Rowlin took a step back, running a large hand over the stubble on his jaw. His tailored jeans stretched taut over his thighs, drawing Karen's attention despite the dire circumstances. "That is not its name. Its name is Drulo." He spoke the word with reverence, a low sound of ownership. "And he is not just a pup. He is the successor. He belongs to the pack. He belongs to me." "Drulo? You name a small wolf pup Drulo?" Karen scoffed, the disbelief helping to mask a rising panic. "Kate left him here. He was on her bed. He's my responsibility until I figure out what the hell is going on." Kate was a fool. A reckless fool. Rowlin spat, his control fraying. "She dabbled in things she couldn't control. She was under my protection, and she still ended up dead. But she was never meant to be with him." He pointed a thick, calloused finger at the pup. "He is pure blood. Our blood. He is the last thing you need tied around your neck, Karen." "Was Kate your lover?" Karen asked, the question sharp and unbidden. Rowlin looked away, his jaw tight. "No, never. She was a connection. She found things for us. She lived on the edge of our world, not in it." He turned back, his gaze intensely focused. "Listen to me, Karen. I am not some mountain man. I am Rowlin, the alpha of the Black Timber Pack. I demand the pup back. I will keep you safe. I will pay you for your silence. But you give me Drulo, and you walk away from this mountain." Alpha, the word, heavy with inherent power, finally ripped through the last shred of Karen's rational denial. This wasn't a local weirdo. This was a supernatural patriarch. "He seems perfectly happy right here," Karen whispered, tightening her hold on the pup, who let out a contented sigh. Rowlin's eyes darkened, turning almost black with frustration. He took 2 steps, closing the distance between them again, the sheer size of his frame eclipsing the low light. "You're making a mistake that will cost you everything," he warned, his voice a low thrum of barely controlled rage. He reached out, his fingers brushing the fine hairs at the nape of her neck. The touch was like a brand, hot, electric, and proprietary. I will not leave without him. I cannot. And if I stay here, Karen, I won't just take the pup. I will take you. The raw hunger in his tone was an explicit threat, a promise of dominance that sent a dizzying wave of heat pooling low in Karen's stomach. He leaned in, his musky scent flooding her senses. "Don't make me rough, little architect." He breathed against her ear, his lips grazing the sensitive skin. "I promise you, you don't want to meet the wolf inside me in the middle of a cabin brawl." Karen lifted her chin, meeting his stare. "Then you'll have to wait, because Drulo is sleeping in Kate's bed, and so am I." The audacity of her reply seemed to stun him into silence. He studied her for a long, agonizing moment, his eyes searching hers, looking for the lie. When he found none, a slow, predatory smile spread across his face, one that promised retribution. "Fine, I'll wait," Rowlin agreed, his voice a sultry rasp. He pulled his hand back slowly, deliberately, dragging his fingertips across the ridge of her jaw, leaving a trail of fire. "But every second I spend in this cabin with your scent, Karen, I grow more impatient, and my control is not absolute." He turned abruptly, walking out of the room without another word, leaving Karen trembling on the bed, her heart hammering out a terrifying new rhythm: suspense, desire, danger. Chapter 4. The Shared Bed. Rowlin did not leave. Karen listened, tense and alert, as he established himself in the living area. She heard the scrape of a heavy chair, the muffled sound of a burner being lit on the stove, and the occasional, deep sigh of a man settling in for a long siege. The musk scent permeated the air, less aggressive now, but no less potent, a steady, demanding signal of his presence. Trapped, with an alpha werewolf and his possible successor in her dead sister's cabin, Drulo, the pup, stirred in her arms, letting out a soft, sleepy puff of breath against her collarbone. He was warm, impossibly soft, and entirely vulnerable. Looking down at the miniature wolf face, Karen felt a fierce, irrational protectiveness bloom in her chest. She crept out of the bedroom, Drulo tucked securely against her. Rowlin was sprawled in Kate's armchair by the cold fireplace, his head tilted back, one large, booted foot propped on a low table. He was reading, of all things, one of Kate's tattered volumes on ancient folklore. He didn't look up, but his voice was a low chord in the silence. "The bathroom is down the hall. Don't try the windows. And for God's sake, feed him. He needs raw meat, not milk." Karen's knuckles tightened. "You expect me to wait on you?" Rowlin finally looked up, his expression a languid mixture of arrogance and amusement. "I expect you to survive the night, Karen. I will not hurt you. I cannot, not with him near you." He nodded towards Drulo. "But the forest is wide, and the wolves are restless." She hated the easy authority in his voice, the implicit threat, but she knew he was right. She was out of her element. She found the kitchen, a chaotic but well-stocked room. There was a package of prime ground venison in the freezer. With trembling hands, Karen prepared a small portion, which Drulo consumed with a startling, quiet efficiency. Hours passed in a state of agonizing, silent tension. Rowlin was a stationary, intimidating presence, his ice-blue eyes occasionally lifting from his book to track her movements with predatory precision. When the moon finally rose, casting long, eerie shadows through the window panes, the cabin grew cold. Karen returned to the bedroom, Drulo already heavy with sleep in her arms. She pulled off her own clothes, leaving her standing in a simple cotton bra and panties, practical, not seductive. She tossed back the crimson duvet. A moment later, Rowlin was standing in the doorway, blocking the exit, his shadow long and menacing. "Where do you think you're going?" Karen demanded, crossing her arms defensively. "You think I would let you sleep alone with Drulo?" Rowlin's voice was a soft purr, but his eyes were blazing with unmasked intent. "He is safest when his alpha is near, and you are safest when I am near. It's a shared arrangement, little architect." "Out of the question," she hissed, pulling the sheet up to her chest. "No, it's necessary." He moved into the room with seamless grace, stripping off his leather jacket and tossing it onto the floor. The black t-shirt followed, revealing a sculpted torso etched with hard, powerful muscle. Skin stretched taut over his chest and abdomen. He was magnificent, a breathtaking portrait of raw, masculine power. He stopped at the foot of the bed, unsnapping his jeans. Karen watched, unable to look away, the air in her lungs snagging. "You don't have a choice, Karen. You brought him in. You keep him safe." He shrugged out of the denim, leaving him in nothing but a pair of dark boxer briefs that did little to conceal the impressive bulge of his arousal. "And I can't sleep on that couch. It stinks of grief." Karen wanted to scream, to rail against the sheer arrogance of his invasion, but her body was betraying her. The sight of his powerful form, the raw, animal heat radiating off him, the way her nipples suddenly peaked against the cotton, it was all too much. Rowlin slid under the sheet on the opposite side of the king-sized bed, his long, muscled body sinking into the mattress. He pulled the duvet up to his waist, his ice-blue eyes locked on her in the dim light. "Good night, Karen," he whispered, his voice dangerously intimate. "Don't worry. The moon is only partial tonight. I won't take you yet." The heat of his presence was immediate, powerful, and utterly intoxicating. Karen lay stiffly, the scent of pine and male musk engulfing her. Drulo nestled like a living, breathing barrier between the two of them. She was sharing a bed with a werewolf alpha, and the realization was both terrifying and electrifying. Chapter 5. The Line of Fire. The night was a torment of unfulfilled tension. Karen lay rigid, hyper-aware of every minuscule shift in the mattress, every deep, measured breath Rowlin took on the other side of Drulo. The small pup was a furnace between them, a fragile, living boundary keeping an explosive energy barely contained. As the moon began its slow descent, Rowlin shifted. He rolled onto his side, his arm instinctively reaching out in his sleep, not for the pup, but for Karen. His large hand landed squarely on her hip, his fingers curling possessively into the thin cotton of her panties. Karen gasped, the sudden, searing touch sending a jolt of fire through her core. His skin was hot, radiating the vital, aggressive warmth of his wolf side. She couldn't move. Her body was paralyzed, a cascade of confusing signals warring within her: fear, primal attraction, and a desperate curiosity. Rowlin wasn't fully awake. He muttered something low and guttural, his grip tightening. He shifted closer, pulling her back against the solid wall of his chest. His arousal pressed against her hip, thick and undeniable, a heavy, insistent heat. "Mine," he whispered, the single word a rough, proprietorial sound against the back of her neck. His lips found the sensitive skin beneath her ear, grazing it lightly, a simple movement that was devastating in its intimacy. Karen's breath hitched. Her body instinctively arched back, pushing her rear flush against his hardness. The friction was electric, and a moan she barely recognized escaped her lips. "Karen," he groaned, his voice suddenly thick, lucid. He was awake now, fueled by the scent and feel of her. He didn't hesitate. His hand slid from her hip down her stomach, expertly hooking the elastic band of her underwear. With a single, decisive tug, he peeled the thin cotton away, discarding it to the floor. His large, hot palm settled flat against the bare skin of her abdomen, resting just below her navel. The touch was a declaration. Karen finally found her voice, a shaky whisper of protest. "Rowlin, stop." "No," he contradicted, his voice low and firm, overriding her command with the natural authority of his pack standing. "This has been building since I smelled you, since I watched you touch Drulo. This heat, it's the wolf, Karen. He knows your scent is meant for him." He trailed his fingers lower, slipping beneath the waistband of her bra, finding the soft, sensitive skin of her inner thigh. His touch was slow, deliberate, mapping the contours of her body, awakening dormant nerves. Karen's resistance crumbled beneath the intensity of his presence. She tilted her head back, offering him her neck, a subconscious gesture of surrender. His lips claimed the smooth curve of her shoulder, kissing a burning trail to her neck, drawing a sharp, needy sound from her. "Let me taste you," he demanded, his voice dropping to a gravelly, irresistible plea. His hand left her thigh, traveling up her side, cupping the weight of her breast. He rubbed his thumb over the peaked nipple, sending a fierce, shattering pleasure through her. Just as the world was narrowing to the sound of her own ragged breathing and the heat of Rowlin's body against hers, a low, metallic clink sounded from the floor beside the bed. Rowlin froze. His body went instantly rigid, the fiery passion replaced by an abrupt, deadly alertness. "What was that?" he hissed, his eyes wide and scanning the dark room. He pulled his hand away from her breast, the sudden loss of contact, an aching emptiness. Karen, still reeling, tried to orient herself. The sound had come from the pile of clothes she'd dropped by the dresser. Rowlin swung his legs off the bed, his primal senses on high alert. He moved with the silent, deadly grace of a hunter, his naked torso a perfect silhouette against the dim light. He reached the clothes and knelt, his gaze focused on a small, dark object that had fallen out of Kate's old trench coat pocket, which Karen had left hanging there. He picked it up. It was a tarnished silver locket, the chain broken. "It's Kate's," Karen whispered, climbing out of the bed, the sudden chill on her bare skin irrelevant compared to the fear coiling in her gut. Rowlin flipped the locket open. Inside, instead of a photograph, was a small, crudely drawn symbol, a crescent moon with 3 intersecting claw marks. But it was the back of the locket that drew his attention. Engraved there in small, precise script were 4 letters, DRULO, and beneath that a single, damning word, father. Rowlin slowly lifted his head, his face a mask of disbelief and shattering realization. He looked from the locket to the small, sleeping pup on the bed, and then, finally, to Karen. His ice-blue eyes were no longer burning with lust or possessiveness, but with the horrifying, absolute certainty. "No," he whispered, the sound raw and torn. "Kate didn't leave him for me." His gaze darted to the window, where a faint, almost invisible light was flashing sporadically on the edge of the tree line. Someone was signaling the cabin. She left him for him. Chapter 6. The Unnamed Father. The tarnished silver locket felt impossibly heavy in Rowlin's hand. The word father carved beneath Drulo's name was a knife twisting in the gut of his alpha pride. He wasn't just a powerful alpha demanding a pup. He was a leader who had been blindsided, cuckolded by a ghost. But the sting of personal insult was immediately eclipsed by the chilling realization of the truth. Kate hadn't been protecting Drulo from Rowlin. She had been keeping Drulo's existence secret from the one man who had a true, lethal claim. D.R.U.L.O. "Father," Karen whispered, reading the inscription over his shoulder, her voice trembling. "Who is him? Who did Kate leave her son for?" Rowlin's eyes, now a volatile mix of icy blue and a rapidly encroaching, molten gold, snapped to the window. The faint light was still blinking, a rhythm Karen couldn't decipher, but which Rowlin instantly recognized. "That's not a signal, Karen. It's a marker," he growled, tossing the locket onto the bed. "It's a hunter's triangulation. Someone's coming." "A hunter," Karen repeated, pulling the duvet around her bare shoulders. "Like a poacher?" "No, a different kind of hunter. Werewolves don't die of a fall, Karen." Kate was silenced. Rowlin moved with terrifying speed, crossing the room to the heavy dresser, throwing open the drawers. He pulled out 2 thick, rough-spun shirts and a pair of trousers. Drulo is a half-breed, but his blood is pure on the paternal side. He is a direct threat to another alpha's line, and I know who that alpha is. His face was a thundercloud of fury and grim resolution. Drulo's father is likely the alpha of the White Moon Pack, my pack's bitter rivals, led by a bastard named Marcus. Kate was a messenger for him, a woman who slept with the enemy for information and got impregnated with the crown prince in the process. Rowlin threw the clothes at Karen. "Get dressed. Now. Don't ask questions. Don't look out the window. If they see a woman with the pup, they'll just kill you both and claim necessity. They won't leave a witness." The sheer dominance in his tone, the cold, lethal certainty, finally quelled Karen's resistance. She scrambled into the 2 big clothes, the rough material scratching her skin, pulling her from a fog of lust and into the sharp reality of danger. Rowlin was already back at the bed, scooping the sleeping Drulo into the crook of his powerful arm. The pup stirred, nuzzled against the alpha's chest, and instantly settled. "Where are we going?" "The front door is covered," Karen whispered, buttoning the last button of the rough shirt. Rowlin grabbed his leather jacket and a long, wicked-looking hunting knife from beneath the mattress. He met her gaze, the gold in his eyes now dominant, a terrifying, beautiful spectacle. "We're not using the door." He moved to the stone fireplace, his back muscled and tense. He grasped the heavy mantelpiece, applying pressure to a specific stone. With a grinding sound, a section of the stone wall near the hearth slid inward, revealing a cramped, dirt-floored passage. The scent of damp earth and deep forest air rushed into the room. "Kate always had a flair for the dramatic," Rowlin muttered. "This tunnel leads to the creek bed. I need you to go first. Do not make a sound. Do not stop until you see my mark on the ancient juniper tree. 3 claw marks." Karen nodded, her throat too tight for speech. The danger was palpable, an invisible shroud in the air. "Wait." Rowlin reached out, his hand catching her jaw, forcing her to look at him. His face was inches away, his eyes glowing like twin embers in the dark. "If we get separated, find the nearest road. Call the local sheriff. But if you see anyone with a silver pendant, or eyes that glow red, run the other way. They are the enemy." He paused, his thumb brushing across her lower lip, his gaze dropping to her mouth. The sheer audacity of the moment, standing in a secret tunnel, under imminent threat of death, did nothing to dull the electric tension between them. He leaned in and kissed her. It was not the predatory kiss of Chapter 3, but a kiss of desperate urgency, a mingling of fear and a fierce, possessive need. His mouth was hot, demanding, his tongue plunging deep, branding her with the taste of wood smoke and wolf. It was a promise, a claim, a final farewell, all in one devastating moment. He broke the contact, his breath ragged. "I will not lose you. Go." Karen plunged into the darkness of the tunnel, the scent of him and the raw urgency of his kiss still burning on her skin. She had just gone from city architect to the consort of a hunted alpha, carrying the air of a rival pack, all in the space of one terrifying night. Chapter 7. Through the alpha's eyes. The tunnel was cramped, forcing Karen to crawl on her hands and knees. The damp earth cooled her overheated skin, a stark contrast to the raging fire that Rowlin's kiss had ignited. Consort. The word hammered in her head, utterly ridiculous and terrifyingly accurate. She was running with a werewolf alpha. Behind her, she heard the heavy, deliberate sounds of Rowlin following, his larger body scraping the rough stone. She risked a whisper. "The locket said father. How do you know Marcus is the one hunting us?" Rowlin's voice was a low, resonant growl, surprisingly close. Kate was our eyes in his territory. She was gathering intelligence, selling it to us for protection and gold. She hated him. He's a brute. But she was practical. The White Moon Pack has a very specific bloodline sigil, the claw marks. The crescent moon is ours. She put both on that locket. It was a warning to me, not a plea to Marcus. "And you think she loved him?" "The father." Rowlin let out a short, harsh laugh. "Kate loved no one, Karen, except maybe herself and the thrill of the chase. She was playing both sides, and when she got pregnant, she knew she had created a prize worth killing for, a pup with the blood of 2 packs. The tunnel opened abruptly into the bank of a swift-running creek. The water was icy, but the noise of the rushing current provided perfect cover. Rowlin emerged behind her, his movements fluid and soundless despite the weight of Drulo in his arms. He was breathing heavily, his eyes still glowing. The transformation, Karen realized with a shudder, was not just limited to the full moon. It was an internal fire that he constantly fought to suppress. "Stay in the creek. Your scent is strong. The water will break the trail," he commanded, his voice tight. He led her downstream, navigating the treacherous, moss-slicked rocks with uncanny ease. Karen stumbled repeatedly, her ankles twisting, but Rowlin was always there, a solid, a movable presence that would reach out and steady her without a word. After what felt like an hour, they reached a massive, ancient juniper. Rowlin's hand went up, and Karen saw the 3 deep claw marks scored into the bark. "This is where we leave the water," he said, pulling her onto the embankment. As they scrambled up the muddy slope, Rowlin stumbled. He let out a suppressed grunt, his features contorted in momentary pain. "Are you hurt?" Karen asked, instantly worried. "Not hurt, just adjusting." He looked at her, his eyes molten gold, and she realized the shift was happening faster now. "The stress, your scent, the proximity of the moon, my control is slipping. I'm too close to the surface, Karen. And when he comes out..." He paused, inhaling sharply. "He won't want to run. He'll want to fight. And he will want to claim." He pulled her up the last stretch of the slope, their bodies pressing together. The contact was excruciatingly electric. "Rowlin, I don't understand this connection. I'm just Kate's sister. I don't belong here." "You belong where your scent tells me you belong." He pushed her back against the rough bark of the juniper, caging her body with his arms. Drulo remained sleeping, nestled against Rowlin's neck, completely oblivious. "Your sister was fire and chaos. You are water and stone. A perfect balance. The scent is in your blood, Karen. You are a mate bond catalyst," he whispered, his breath hot on her lips. "The scent of Drulo on you, it completes the connection. The pup's presence has tied you to the pack." His large, calloused hand cupped the back of her head, his fingers tangling in her hair. "The wolf in me wants to take you down right here, right now, to scent mark you so deeply that Marcus's pack would smell me on you from 3 miles away. It's an insane, primitive need, and I can't fight it much longer." He pressed his hips against hers, the hard, aggressive bulge of his arousal shocking Karen with its size and insistence. "If you want me to stop, Karen, you need to tell me. Now," he demanded, his voice strained, a plea for control. Karen closed her eyes, the sheer danger and overwhelming desire colliding. She tasted the metallic tang of fear and the intoxicating musk of his power. I don't want you to stop," she confessed, the whispered words of surrender. Rowlin let out a deep, satisfied growl. He pushed her harder against the tree, his mouth descending, this time with a primal ferocity that stripped away any pretense of gentle romance. He was marking her, claiming her, sealing their fate under the cover of the ancient, silent forest. It was a promise of survival and utter, devastating possession. Chapter 8. The Scent of Silver. Rowlin broke the kiss abruptly, his chest heaving, his gold eyes blazing. He backed away, putting a critical 2 feet of space between them. The self-control was palpable, a physical restraint that cost him a visible effort. "We can't. Not here. Not now," he stated, his voice a rasp. "We have to put distance between us and the cabin. They will assume we ran to the pack lands. We're going the other way. We're going deep into the dead pine hollow." He grabbed her hand, his palm rough and hot against hers, and pulled her after him. The Dead Pine Hollow was aptly named, a section of the forest where a previous blight had left a labyrinth of fallen, brittle trees and dense, choking undergrowth. It was treacherous, but it was cover. They moved at a relentless pace. Rowlin never faltered, his senses finely tuned to the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, the shifting winds. Karen, despite her exhaustion, found a surprising reserve of strength, driven by the sheer, electric force of the man beside her and the vulnerable weight of the pup he carried. As they skirted a field of dense ferns, Rowlin suddenly stopped, his body going rigid. He slowly raised his hand, signaling absolute silence. Karen froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could smell nothing but earth and pine, but Rowlin was clearly sensing something lethal. He slowly pulled her behind the enormous, exposed root system of a long-dead spruce. He knelt, positioning his body as a shield for both her and the pup. "They're here," he mouthed against her ear, his breath a shuddering heat. 2 of them, White Moon scouts. They picked up the scent trail at the creek bed. A moment later, they heard them, heavy, crunching footsteps moving through the underbrush, accompanied by the low, excited chuffing of a pair of large wolves. The sound was distinctively canine, heavier, less refined than the subtle shift Karen had witnessed in Rowlin. Then a voice, hissing and low, cut through the night air. He's running to the hollow. I smell the alpha, and I smell a female scent. Strong, new, unmarked. Rowlin's entire body went rigid against Karen. His grip on the knife tightened, his knuckles white. The mention of her being unmarked, not formally claimed, was an open invitation to the rival pack. The second voice was a guttural snarl. And the pup. The alpha is carrying the pup. He's running protection for Marcus's son. Marcus doesn't know what he's running, Rowlin muttered to Karen, his voice barely audible. He thinks Drulo is a pure-blood prize. He doesn't know Kate complicated the lineage. One of the pursuers suddenly moved close. Too close. Karen saw a flash of movement through the foliage. A tall, lean man with a face obscured by shadow, his eyes reflecting the faint moonlight in an unnatural shade of red. He was carrying something long and slender, a modified crossbow. The scent that wafted over them was sharp, acrid, and metallic. It was the smell of silver. They're using scent markers and silver-tipped bolts, Rowlin whispered, a grim certainty in his tone. If they scratch me, I'm useless. We have to draw them away from Drulo. The man with the red eyes stopped less than 10 feet away. He was sniffing the air, his lips peeled back in a predatory snarl. Rowlin pushed Karen gently, imperceptibly, deeper into the root system. He then did the most terrifying thing possible. He let out a low, challenging growl, a sound that was pure, untamed wolf. It was a baiting call, drawing attention to his position. The red-eyed man whirled around, his crossbow leveled. There, the alpha. He's cornered. Rowlin didn't wait. He launched himself out of their hiding spot, not toward the man, but in the opposite direction, toward a dense thicket of blackberry brambles, moving with a staggering burst of speed. The scout hesitated for only a second, then gave chase, shouting for his partner. He's running. After him. Karen was left alone, curled beneath the roots, holding her breath, listening to the crashing pursuit fade into the darkness. Rowlin had sacrificed his position, his safety, to ensure their escape. Tears pricked her eyes, not of fear, but of gratitude and a deepening, terrifying connection to the dangerous man who was now running for her life. Chapter 9. The Lair of Sanctuary. Karen waited until the crashing sounds of the chase were completely gone, leaving only the ordinary sounds of the nocturnal forest. The silence was heavy, broken only by the whimpers of Drulo, who had been left nestled in a bed of moss Rowlin had quickly prepared. Rowlin had been gone for almost half an hour. The wait was agonizing. She rocked the pup, trying to soothe him, her nerves frayed to breaking point. She was completely alone, utterly reliant on a man she barely knew, a werewolf caught in a bloody pack feud. Finally, she heard a faint, familiar whistle, a single, low note followed by a double chirp. Rowlin's signal. She gathered Drulo and emerged from the roots, following the sound. It led her a short distance away to a towering rock face where a low, camouflaged opening was almost invisible beneath a curtain of thick ivy. Rowlin was inside already. He stood by the entrance, bleeding profusely from a long, shallow cut across his bicep. I had to draw them past the scent trail, then double back. I lost them in the brambles, he said, his voice ragged. He was shirtless, having ripped a rough shirt off to check his wound. His chest was rising and falling rapidly, glistening with sweat. The silver? Karen asked, her eyes going straight to the cut. It was angry and red, but not deep. No, it was a branch, but it stings like a witch's curse on a night like this. He gestured with his chin to the small, dark cave. This is the lair. It's small, but it's dry and it's warded. No one will find us here. The lair was little more than a fissure in the rock, barely large enough for two people to lie down. It was lined with dry pine needles and old blankets, rudimentary but functional hideout. Rowlin sank onto the blankets, his exhaustion suddenly evident. He slumped against the rough wall, closing his eyes, his breathing heavy. Karen placed Drulo gently beside him, then knelt to examine the wound. The cut was long but not fatal. She looked up at Rowlin, her eyes locking onto his. "I can help you clean this," she offered, reaching for the water bottle they had grabbed from the cabin. Rowlin shook his head. "Don't. My wolf needs to heal it. But my control is thin, Karen. I need a distraction." He reached out, his hand wrapping around her wrist, pulling her toward him. He didn't stop until she was sitting straddling his thighs, her knees brushing the sides of his hips. The contact was instant, volcanic. His arousal was prominent against her. "Talk to me. About Kate," he commanded, his voice raw. "There's nothing to tell. She was my shadow. She left. She wrote postcards about the mountains and the freedom, never about a pup or a pack war. Tell me about you then." His hand found her hip, his thumb pressing into the soft skin just above the waistband of his borrowed trousers. "I'm an architect. I draw lines. I build structures. I'm stability. I'm the opposite of her. The opposite of this." She gestured around the cave. "No," Rowlin growled, shaking his head. "I tasted the chaos in your mouth, Karen. It's what Kate was running from, and what she unleashed in you. And the scent, it's only growing stronger." His lips curved into a predatory, beautiful smile. "Tell me you don't feel it, Karen. The magnetic pull. The wolf choosing his mate over logic, over life." "I feel fire," she admitted, her voice choked. "Good." He reached up and slowly, deliberately, began to unbutton the rough shirt she wore, his shirt. His fingers were large, but surprisingly gentle, gliding over her collarbone, exposing the delicate skin beneath. "Why am I a catalyst, Rowlin?" she whispered, shivering as he pushed the shirt off her shoulders, leaving her bare-chested in the dim light. His gold eyes raked over her body, the look burning hotter than any touch. "The mate bond is rare. It's a connection that strengthens the alpha and heals the pack. It chooses the mate based on the need of the pack. You, Karen, are stability, structure, the anchor for the pup. You calm the wolf. You complete the line." He pulled her down until her mouth was only an inch from his. "And you are the only woman who has made me want to forget the war and simply claim." With a swift, powerful movement, he flipped them, pinning her beneath him, his weight a heavy, glorious assertion of dominance. He reached down and roughly peeled the trousers off her legs, scattering them onto the blankets. They were skin to skin, heat against heat, the raw, musky scent of him filling the small lair. He was rock-hard and ready, his desire mirroring the desperate need that had suddenly blossomed deep inside her. "The moon is rising, Karen," he rasped, his eyes darkening to a near black, the gold receding. "The wolf is coming out. If you want me to be gentle, it has to be now." Karen reached up, her hands tangling in his dark, damp hair, pulling his mouth down to hers. "No, Rowlin," she panted, her voice filled with a desperate thrill. "I want to meet the wolf. Now." Chapter 10. Claimed by the moon. The air in the small lair thickened with the scent of pine, blood, and burgeoning desire. Rowlin's control was a thin, tattered veil, his body trembling with the effort of holding back the full shift. Karen's challenge, "I want to meet the wolf," was the final break. With a deep, guttural sound that was less a groan and more a controlled roar, Rowlin plunged his hand into the hair at the nape of her neck and claimed her mouth. This kiss was violent, demanding, an immediate and total consumption. He kissed her with the urgency of a creature who had been starved for a century, his tongue sweeping into her mouth with a fierce, possessive hunger that made her head swim. Karen met his passion with her own. She wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling his heavy, muscled body tight against her, desperate for the full weight of him. Her hands roamed over the ridges of his back, the sheer power of his physique a dizzying aphrodisiac. He broke the kiss, lowering his head to her neck. He didn't bite, but his teeth dragged lightly over her skin, marking her with a subtle warning, an intimate promise. "You're mine, little architect." He breathed against her pulse point, the words vibrating through her body. "The scent is a lie. The feeling is real. You've been mine since you held my son." He shifted his weight, expertly positioning himself. He parted her thighs, his eyes locking onto hers, a final, intense moment of human connection before the animal took over. "I won't be able to stop," he warned, his voice deep, thick with the transformation. "Then don't," Karen whispered, arching up to meet him. He entered her with a single, powerful thrust. There was a moment of searing intensity, then a dizzying, exquisite fullness. Karen cried out, the sound swallowed by the small confines of the lair. He was impossibly large, filling her completely, a potent and overwhelming force. Rowlin paused, his eyes squeezed shut, fighting the internal combustion. Then the wolf won. He began to move, a slow, deep, devastating rhythm that quickly accelerated into a primal, frantic pace. He was no longer trying to be gentle. He was driven by pure instinct, the raw, demanding needs of a desperate alpha laying claim. Karen was swept away. She clung to him, meeting his thrusts with an abandoned ferocity she never knew she possessed. The friction, the heat, the sound of their bodies slick with sweat, the deep, animalistic moans Rowlin couldn't suppress. It was a sensory overload that drove her higher and faster than any structured reality. His breathing turned into harsh, rapid pants. His movements became desperate, faster and deeper, pushing her to the edge. "Look at me, Karen," he commanded, his voice ripping from his chest. She opened her eyes. His face was distorted, his handsome features strained, his jaw locked. But his eyes, the gold was back, glowing brilliantly in the dark, staring into her soul, seeing not the architect, but the chaos he had unleashed. A final, seismic thrust shattered the last of her control. Karen screamed as a profound, shattering climax overtook her, her body convulsing around his incredible size. Rowlin let out a triumphant, guttural roar, a sound of pack satisfaction and male dominance. He plunged into her one last time, emptying himself into her with a deep, shuddering groan, collapsing onto her chest, his heavy body slick with sweat. They lay there entwined, breathing the same ragged, post-climax air, their bodies forming a perfect, heated whole. The quiet whimpers of Drulo, still sleeping beside them, were the only sound of reality. "And mine," Rowlin rasped, his voice now calm, satisfied, the wolf temporarily sated. He was heavy, warm, and deeply embedded. Just as Karen began to drift into a post-coital stupor, lulled by the heavy weight of the alpha on her, a new sound cut through the silence. It was not the sound of a wolf or a man. It was the low, distinct sound of a metal object sliding against the rock face right outside the ivy curtain. And then a cold, measured voice, too close for comfort, sliced through the small cave. Well, it seems the Black Timber Alpha found himself a comfortable little nest to breed in. Marcus will be pleased to know his son is tucked and safe, Rowlin. Chapter 11. The Silver Threat. The cold, measured voice from outside the lair ripped through the heat of their shared climax, like a shard of ice. Karen's body, still molten and shuddering from Rowlin's force, went instantly rigid. The scent of pine and musk was abruptly contaminated by a faint, metallic odor, the same acrid, hateful smell of silver. Rowlin didn't move an inch. He was still deep inside her, his weight a crushing blanket, but the soft, post-coital languor had vanished. His muscles bunched under her hands, hard as river stone. He was silent, listening. The scent of him, moments ago an intoxicating perfume of ownership, was now a shield of raw, untamed power. "Get out of my lair, Keegan," Rowlin growled, his voice low and vibrating with a suppressed, lethal fury. The name was spat out like a curse. "You violated pack neutrality. The penalty is death." The voice outside chuckled, a dry, rusty sound. "Penalty? Rowlin, you sound stressed. Did the city girls welcome wear you out? Marcus sends his regards. And a token." There was a distinct thud as something hard landed just outside the ivy curtain. Rowlin pushed himself up, still partially inside Karen, and twisted his head to see. It was a small, perfectly carved wooden idol, shaped like a wolf's head, the symbol of the White Moon Pack. Pierced through its eye, pinning it to the dirt, was a silver needle. A clear, arrogant message. Karen pushed herself up, pulling the dry blankets around her bare chest, ignoring the painful stretch of her muscles. What do they want? They want Drulo. They want to know Kate's exact lineage, who the pup's mother was, because it matters for Marcus's succession. And now, Rowlin pulled out of her the sudden emptiness, a cold, shocking vacuum. They want me. They know I won't leave the pup. They're baiting a fight, here, away from the pack. He grabbed the hunting knife. His eyes were pure, molten gold, the transformation fully realized. He moved with a devastating speed that was almost impossible to track. He didn't bother with clothes. His naked body was a steady and aggressive, honed power built for a fight. You're coming in, Keegan, or you're leaving with a knife in your throat, Rowlin warned, his voice a low, terrifying snarl. Keegan's laugh rang out again. A threat from the impotent alpha? Such theatrics. You are bleeding, Rowlin. That branch must have been festering. Come out, and we can discuss a peaceful surrender. We'll take the pup and the city girl. You can keep your little cabin. Rowlin ignored the taunt, his focus entirely on the threat of the silver. His pack had a genetic weakness to the metal. Karen, watching him, her mind racing, saw the glint of the needle in the wooden idol. She scrambled for a water bottle and a rough, discarded shirt. "Rowlin, wait," she hissed, her voice commanding an unexpected stop. She soaked a corner of the shirt with water, crept to the opening, and with a swift, careful movement, snatched the wooden idol and the silver needle. She plunged the needle into the earth inside the lair, then wiped her hands on the damp cloth, neutralizing any residue. Rowlin looked at her, his eyes narrowed in an impressed, predatory glare. Practical. I like that. The blood of the alpha is the best bait, Karen said, her voice steady despite the trembling of her hands. They know you're injured and exposed. We need to move. Where? They're right outside. I'm the distraction, Karen said, taking another shirt and rubbing it roughly over Rowlin's neck, gathering his overpowering scent. You shift. You move through the underbrush, drawing them away from the lair. I'll go to the creek, drawing them to the water. They'll expect me to try to lose the scent trail again. They'll see the scent marker. Rowlin stared at her, his eyes intense. No, I just claimed you. I am not sending my mate out there alone. You are the alpha. You don't get a choice. They want you and the pup. I'm just a witness. I'm expendable to them, but my scent is not. It's too strong on this shirt, Rowlin. They'll follow it. Karen shoved the shirt into his arms, her gaze fierce and unwavering. I have Drulo. You get us a path to your pack. And don't you dare die out there, Alpha. Not when I'm still sore from your rut. The raw defiance, the intimate language, and the sheer audacity of her plan sent a ripple of primal satisfaction through Rowlin. He was forced to recognize the steel beneath the architect's suit. He grabbed her, pulling her close, his eyes blazing. If you are hurt, Karen, I will slaughter every man in the White Moon pack. Do you understand? He pressed a fierce, possessive kiss to her forehead, a mark of pack authority, and then vanished. The lair was suddenly empty, the only sound the deep, steady breathing of the pup. Karen quickly dressed in the remaining clothes, took a deep breath, and prepared to face the hunters. Chapter 12, A Dangerous Bargain. Karen held Drulo tight, the pup's tiny form a surprising weight of comfort. She waited until she heard the low, urgent sounds of Rowlin's full, four-legged shift and the rapid, powerful crashes of his departure through the thicket. He was running hard, laying down a clear, aggressive scent trail. A moment later, she heard the guttural shouts of the White Moon scout, Keegan, the alpha. He's running. After him. Karen waited 5 agonizing seconds, then quietly pushed the ivy curtain aside and emerged from the lair. She was exposed, vulnerable, holding the air of the very feud she was trying to escape. She began to walk, deliberately not running, toward the direction of the creek. She was the decoy, the scent marker. She hadn't taken 20 steps when she heard a new sound, not the heavy boots of the chase, but a low, stalking stride behind her. Smart girl, but not smart enough. Karen whirled around. Keegan stood 20 feet away, a lean shadow of a man, his eyes glowing a malevolent red. He was holding the crossbow, its silver-tipped bolt resting in the firing groove. "You're not going after the alpha?" Karen asked, her voice cracking slightly. Keegan smiled, a cruel, cold expression that stretched his features. "Rowlin is predictable. He'll lead the main pack on a goose chase. But you are the prize. The pup is the claim, but the new mate of a rival alpha, that's a much sweeter trophy." He took a step closer. "I was sent to retrieve the pup, but Marcus didn't forbid a bit of sport along the way. Drop the pup, and come with me, little architect." Karen clutched Drulo tighter. The pup began to whimper, sensing the danger. "I won't drop him. He's my sister's son," Karen stated, buying time, her eyes scanning the forest for any sign of Rowlin's return. "Sister?" "Yes," Kate was entertaining. "Reckless." Keegan's red eyes dropped to Drulo. "But the pup is Marcus's blood. And you carry the scent of Rowlin's rut. You're staying, girl. But perhaps the alpha of the White Moon could still find use for you." Karen knew her chances of outrunning him were zero. She needed to attack his pack loyalty, his ego. "Rowlin said you're not the alpha. You're just a scout," she said, her voice dripping with scorn. "You do the dirty work while Marcus is hiding in his den. Is that why you're here alone? Because you're too cowardly to take on a wounded alpha one-on-one?" Keegan's face twisted in fury. "Silence. You know nothing of our pack structure." "I know this," Karen challenged, pulling the pup away from her body and exposing him fully to the scout's view. "This pup has the blood of two packs. He is the bridge. If you kill me, Rowlin will lose control and declare an all-out war. No alpha wants that on his territory. But if you take Drulo and me to your pack, you've started the war anyway. You've crossed the line." She lowered her voice, making it a conspiratorial whisper. "You take us to Marcus, and you get the credit for the double capture. The alpha, the prize, and the pup. That makes you a hero. You kill us here, and Rowlin's pack will never rest until they have your head. What does a hero do, Keegan?" Keegan's crossbow wavered. The allure of the double capture, and the credit it would bring to a low-ranking scout was a powerful, almost irresistible temptation. "I take you both," Keegan agreed, his red eyes blazing with avarice. "Drop the knife, and we go. You walk in front. No tricks." Karen knew this was a terrible idea, but it was the only path that allowed her to live long enough for Rowlin to execute his counterplan. She dropped her small hunting knife. Keegan smiled, a truly evil, satisfied expression. "Good girl. Now move." He nudged her forward with the blunt end of his crossbow. Karen moved toward the river, holding Drulo tightly. She had just traded one alpha's protection for another's capture. Chapter 13. The Pack Lands. Keegan led Karen and Drulo on a forced march, not toward the creek, but in a completely unexpected direction, straight up the steepest incline of the ridge. He was clearly determined to put distance between them and the Black Timber Pack's immediate territory. The terrain was brutal. Karen scrambled up the loose scree and exposed roots, her lungs burning, the weight of the pup taxing her limited strength. Keegan followed, his stride tireless, the silver-tipped crossbow never wavering. "Where are we going?" Karen gasped, pausing to catch her breath. "To the Witch's Crossing," Keegan sneered. "It's a point on the border where the protections are weakest. We'll cross there, and then we'll meet Marcus." The thought of facing Marcus, the brute alpha who had impregnated Kate and whose men had likely killed her, sent a cold wave of dread through Karen. She clung to the hope that Rowlin would somehow anticipate her move. As they crested the ridge, the forest suddenly opened up into a breathtaking, moonlit vista. Below them, a vast, unbroken expanse of dark forest stretched for miles. That, Karen knew, was the Black Timber Pack territory. The next stretch is open ground. "Run, and I shoot the pup," Keegan warned, his voice flat. They began the descent. It was a perilous, sliding scramble down a steep, rocky path. Halfway down, the ground gave way beneath Karen's feet. She cried out, stumbling, managing only to hold Drulo up high as she pitched forward. Keegan reacted instantly, but not to help her. He raised his crossbow. ready to shoot if she dropped the pup. Just as Karen was about to hit the ground, a massive, dark shape hurtled out of the tree line. It was Rowlin, fully transformed, a magnificent, terrifying timber wolf, larger and darker than any animal she had ever seen. He moved like a liquid shadow, silent and fast. The wolf slammed into Keegan's side, a blur of muscle and fury. Keegan roared in surprise and pain, the crossbow flying from his hands. The silver bolt hit the ground, embedding itself harmlessly in the dirt. Rowlin's wolf form was devastatingly effective. He moved with a brutal, single-minded focus, driving Keegan further down the slope. The sounds of the fight were horrific, snapping wood, tearing cloth, and the raw, agonized screams of the scout. Karen watched, horrified and mesmerized. This was the wolf she had invited, the raw, untamed force of nature, protecting his mate and his heir. The fight was brief and decisive. Rowlin, his teeth bared in a snarl, lunged for Keegan's throat. A moment later, there was a wet, sickening thud and then silence. Rowlin turned, his massive wolf head tilting, his gold eyes locking onto Karen. The look was still intense, still dominant, but now laced with the triumph of the hunt. He trotted back to her, nudging Drulo gently with his wet, dark muzzle, checking the pup's safety. Then he turned to Karen, his wolf eyes holding a profound intelligence. He whined softly, a low, questioning sound. Karen, trembling but secure, reached out and stroked the thick, powerful fur of his neck. "You came back. You killed for us." The wolf responded by licking her hand, a rough, intimate gesture of possessiveness. He then dropped to his belly, offering her his flank. "You want me to ride?" she asked, recognizing the gesture of necessity. The wolf gave a single, deep, affirmative woof. Karen swung her leg over his back, securing Drulo beneath her arm. The fur was dense, warm, and the ride was surprisingly stable. With a powerful surge of his massive legs, Rowlin was running, his speed breathtaking, carrying them deeper into the protective embrace of the Black Timber Pack lands. Chapter 14. Confessions and Marks. The wolf ran through the night, a relentless engine of muscle and determination, carrying his human mate and his precious cargo. The border was still hours away, but they were running faster, Rowlin's focus absolute. As the pre-dawn light began to filter through the trees, Rowlin slowed, eventually stopping in a small, hidden clearing beside a waterfall. He nudged Karen with his head, urging her off his back. Karen slid down, her muscles screaming with fatigue. Drulo, who had slept through the entire ordeal, was still nestled safely in her arms. The wolf didn't immediately shift back. He stood guard for a long moment, sniffing the air, his gold eyes constantly scanning the forest. Only when he was satisfied that the area was clear did he retreat behind the curtain of the waterfall. A moment later, Rowlin emerged naked, his human form less immediately intimidating than the wolf, but still radiating a potent, aggressive male heat. He was weary, his body streaked with mud and small scratches, but the wound on his bicep was almost completely closed, the speed of his healing astounding. He walked straight to Karen and took the sleeping Drulo from her arms. He held the pup with a tenderness that contradicted his recent brutality. "He is safe. For now," Rowlin said, his voice husky. He laid Drulo on a pile of moss and turned his full attention to Karen. "You risked your life. You chose the pack over escape. You are a fool, Karen." He stepped closer, his body eclipsing the rising sun. "I chose you. You are the pack," she corrected, her eyes meeting his. Rowlin's hand reached out, cupping her face, his thumb stroking her jawline. "Tell me the truth, little architect. Why did you stay?" Karen didn't hesitate. "Because I have never felt more real than in that lair with you. The life I left, it was planned, structured, empty. This is dangerous, terrifying, but it is life. And you." She reached out and touched his massive chest, her hand tracing the hard line of his pectoral muscle. "You are a terrifying, gorgeous mess, Rowlin, and you are worth the risk." A deep, satisfied rumble vibrated in his chest. Kate loved the thrill. "You love the structure I provide. You are the perfect mate, Karen. the anchor I didn't know I needed. He pulled her against his naked body. The contact was immediate and overwhelmingly intimate. "I need to complete the claim, Karen," he whispered, his lips grazing her ear. "The White Moon Pack found you unmarked. I need to make sure that no other wolf will ever mistake your belonging. I need to mark you as mine, physically, deeply. Before we reach the boundary, you must carry my true mark." Karen swallowed hard, the seriousness of his intent evident in his rigid body and the solemnity of his voice. "What is a true mark?" "It's a permanent claim. It strengthens the mate bond. It tells every wolf in the forest, pack or rival, who you belong to. It's not just scent, it's blood." He cupped her rear, pulling her closer, his gaze intense. "It's permanent, Karen. Once done, there's no going back to the city, to your old life. Are you ready to be the alpha's mate?" Karen looked at the waterfall, the hidden lair, the sleeping pup, and the magnificent, dominant man holding her. Her choice had already been made. "Yes, Alpha," she breathed, the title a low, erotic submission on her tongue. Rowlin's eyes blazed with triumph and fierce possessiveness. He gently pushed her onto the soft moss, lying down beside her. He began to kiss her, a slow, deep, deliberate exploration that was both tender and utterly demanding. His hands ran over her body, peeling away the last of the rough clothes. He focused on the sensitive skin of her inner thigh, trailing his lips and tongue up her leg. "This mark is here," he rasped, his breath hot against her most sensitive flesh. "It is for my eyes, for my wolf, and for the pups to come. You will carry the Black Timber claim forever." Karen gasped as his mouth found her, his tongue working a demanding magic that instantly sent her spiraling. This was not the quick, desperate run of the night before, but a slow, complete subjugation to his will. He tasted her fully, deeply, drawing out her pleasure with a master's expertise, marking her with his scent and his intimate, powerful touch. When she was on the verge of crying out, trembling, he pulled back, his eyes dark with unspent passion. He looked at her. "Now," he whispered, "I am going to take you completely, until you know nothing but me. You are mine, Karen." He entered her with a controlled, agonizing slowness, filling her with the heavy, deliberate intensity. He moved with a rhythm of absolute dominance, pushing her deep into the moss, claiming every inch of her body and soul. The true mark was not just on her body. It was a brand on her essence. Chapter 15. The River of No Return. The intense lovemaking, the true mark ceremony, left Karen exhausted, completely possessed, but also imbued with a strange, fierce strength. When Rowlin finally pulled out, he didn't leave her side. He remained entwined with her, their bodies a perfect, hot curve, resting for a few precious minutes of quiet safety. He finally stood, pulling on the discarded trousers, his movements brisk. "Rest time is over. We have 2 hours until the boundary. The hunter's moon is rising tonight. I need to get you and Drulo to the main pack house before the full shift. My control will be gone." He gathered Drulo, who was still soundly asleep, and offered Karen a hand. They moved quickly, keeping to the shadows, the silence of the forest unnerving after the violence and passion of the last few hours. The tension was back, thicker now, infused with the anticipation of the full moon. They reached a wide, rushing river, the geographical boundary of the Black Timber Pack territory. The opposite bank was clearly marked by an unmistakable, massive, carved totem of a howling wolf. "The bridge is 2 miles north," Rowlin whispered, his eyes scanning the dense woods on their side. "But we can't risk the open path. We swim the river. The water is fast, but it's the quickest way across." Just as they reached the water's edge, a chilling sound cut through the air, the howl of a foreign wolf, long drawn out and clearly challenging. Rowlin's entire body tensed, his gaze locked onto a small, elevated bluff overlooking their position. 3 figures stood there, 2 lean, red-eyed scouts, and a third, massive man, wearing a coat of pure white fur, his face a steady and brutal, arrogant power. "Rowlin, you fool," the man's voice boomed, easily carrying across the distance. "You ran right into my trap. I told Keegan to lead you to the witch's crossing. I knew you'd panic and cut straight for the river. It was Marcus, the White Moon Alpha. Give me the pup, Rowlin, Marcus commanded, his voice laced with the finality of an executioner. And the woman, you can keep your useless territory. Don't make me come over there. Rowlin did not hesitate. He pushed Karen to the ground, keeping Drulo safe behind his body. He is the successor of the Black Timber Pack, Marcus, and she is my mate. You touch them, and I will drown your entire territory in silver and blood. The Black Timber line will not break for a bastard. Marcus laughed, a deep, cruel sound. Oh, the Alpha is angry. Fine, we'll take them. Now. The two scouts immediately knocked silver-tipped bolts and aimed. Rowlin looked at Karen, his gold eyes blazing with a mixture of desperate love and lethal resolve. Take Drulo and swim, Karen. Do not look back. If you make the totem, you are safe. Run to the pack house and tell them to prepare for a siege. He thrust Drulo into her arms. You are the Alpha's mate, Karen. Your blood is my command. Go. Rowlin did not wait. With a final, explosive cry that was the full, untamed roar of his inner wolf, he launched himself toward the two scouts, drawing their fire, forcing them to turn their attention away from the water. Karen scrambled to the river's edge. Drulo clutched to her chest. She heard the sickening thwack of a bolt hitting flesh and Rowlin's agonized grunt. She plunged into the icy water. The current was immediate and powerful, threatening to rip the pup from her grasp. She kicked and fought, her focus entirely on the opposite bank, the totem pole, the final line of safety. Behind her, she heard the full, blood-curdling sound of Rowlin's transformation, the cracking of bone, the tearing of muscle, the final, desperate plea of the man as he gave way to the beast. He had been wounded by Silver, and now, the hunter's moon was claiming him. She reached the deepest part of the current, struggling against the icy pull. She looked back for one horrifying, agonizing moment. Rowlin was no longer a man. He was a colossal, dark wolf, a true creature of the night, bleeding from his side, fighting a savage, desperate battle against 3 of Marcus's men. Suddenly, a massive, silver-tipped spear flew past Rowlin and plunged into the turbulent water just inches from Karen's head. She couldn't swim and hold the pup and dodge the attacks. She had to choose. She took a deep breath, clutching Drulo. Then she felt a powerful, invisible pressure in her mind, a raw, telepathic scream that was not a warning, but a command. Survive, mate. Karen plunged her body under the freezing water, pulling Drulo with her, letting the violent current take them both, trusting the river to carry the Alpha's mate and the pack's heir to safety before the wolf on the bank could be killed. Chapter 16. The Totem's Sanctuary. The icy water was a physical shock, stealing Karen's breath and numbing her limbs. The roar of the river drowned out the sounds of the fight, replacing the visceral terror with a cold, immediate panic of survival. She held Drulo high above the current, his small body heavy and thankfully dry. She was tumbled and battered by rocks, the frantic, life-or-death struggle a stark contrast to the passionate surrender she had just experienced. Then, the current abruptly lessened. She was pulled into a narrow, calm eddy near the shore. She scrambled, clawing at the muddy bank, until she dragged her soaked, shivering body and the pup onto the solid earth. She collapsed onto the sand, gasping, her entire being focused on the colossal, carved totem pole that towered above her, the final, absolute marker of the Black Timber Pack's land. She had made it. Rowlin's final command had been fulfilled. She was safe, but the memory of Rowlin's silver-wounded agony and the sickening sound of the bolt hitting him was a fresh, hot pain in her mind. Drulo, we're here. We're safe, she whispered, pulling the pup close. A moment later, a rough voice cut through her exhaustion. Who goes there? Show yourself. 2 figures emerged from the dense foliage beside the totem. 2 large men, fully dressed in combat gear, their eyes sharp and guarded. They weren't wolves, but pack guards. Karen struggled to her feet, water pouring from her clothes, her body shivering uncontrollably. I'm Karen. I'm Rowlin's mate, and this is Drulo. We're under attack. The Alpha is pinned down at the Witch's Crossing. He's wounded by Silver and transforming. The guards immediately recognize the Alpha's mate scent, the new, dominant musk mixed with fear. One guard, a large, dark-haired man, rushed forward. The mate bond is new, and the pup is the enemy's blood. The second guard muttered, suspicious. The first guard ignored him, his eyes wide with urgency. Alpha's mate, we must get you to the lodge. And you need to send a beacon. Alpha Rowlin is transforming into the Hunter's Moon shift. Silver will kill him tonight. He grabbed a small, handheld device from his pocket and pressed a button. A low, penetrating hum vibrated in the air, the pack's distress signal. Hurry, the river will destroy his scent trail if Marcus follows. We need to find him now. They led Karen swiftly through a hidden path, leaving the river and the war zone behind. They were running not from hunters, but to their home, a massive, ancient lodge built of stone and dark timber, a structure of enduring power. Karen's architect's heart noted the perfect, defensive positioning of the building, even as her body threatened to give out. As they reached the heavy oak doors of the lodge, a sudden, mournful howl echoed through the valley, not of a challenge, but of profound, silver-laced agony. It was the sound of a powerful creature, fighting a poison that was amplified by the Hunter's Moon. That's him, Karen cried, fear washing over her in a freezing wave. They have to find him now. Chapter 17. The Trial of the True Mate. The pack lodge interior was a maze of flickering firelight, rich timber, and organized chaos. Karen was immediately surrounded by a score of faces, men and women of varying ages, all sharing the same intense, feral gaze. They looked at her with a mix of suspicion and desperate hope. Drulo was whisked away by an older woman, a healer, who gently promised his safety. Karen was offered dry clothes and warm broth, but she couldn't take her eyes off the door. A tall, powerfully built man with sharp, intelligent eyes, who was clearly a leader, approached her. He wore a simple wool tunic and a severe expression. I am Silas, the beta. We found Rowlin. He is critical. The silver has hit deep, and the full moon is moments away, Silas said, his voice clipped and formal. The pack needs to know, city woman, are you truly his mate? Did he give you the true mark? Karen nodded, her throat tight. Yes, we mated. I am his mate, and the pup is under his protection. The pup is the son of Marcus, our greatest enemy, and Rowlin's choice of mate is untraditional. Silas's eyes dropped to her inner thigh, recognizing the unique, dominant scent of the claim. We can't touch him. The Alpha is currently in full shift, and the silver makes him violent, unpredictable. If we get too close, he will kill us. The great double doors burst open. For large men struggled to carry a makeshift stretcher bearing a colossal black wolf. Rowlin's wolf form was magnificent, but his state was terrifying. He was thrashing, his teeth snapping at the air, his eyes, no longer gold, but a terrifying, silver-laced white. The silver poison was amplified by the full moon's power, tearing him apart from the inside. He's convulsing. The moon is pushing him. The silver is fighting it. Someone shouted. Silas moved swiftly, shouting orders. Tie him down. Keep him warm. Do not let the shift complete, or the poison will burn through his system. The room descended into a desperate, panicked struggle. Ropes were tossed around the massive wolf, but every time a pack member got close, Rowlin's teeth flashed, forcing them back. The Alpha was trapped in a painful, impossible conflict. Silas turned to Karen, his eyes grim. We can't hold him. We can't get the antidote to him. If the mate bond is real, Karen, then you are the only one who can touch him now. The mate bond must override the Alpha's rage. Karen looked at the suffering beast, the magnificent, dangerous man who had just claimed her as his own. She saw the architect's problem, a system. The mate bond must correct a fault, the silver poison. Without a word, Karen walked toward the convulsing wolf. Stop. He'll tear you apart. Silas warned. Rowlin's massive head snapped toward her, his lips drawn back in a silent, terrifying snarl. His white eyes fixed on her, recognizing her scent, yet unable to control the instinctive rage. Karen ignored the fear, focusing on the scent of musk and heat that was uniquely his. She slowly pulled off the rough-spun shirt she was wearing. The mate bond was raw and new, but it was powerful. "I am your mate, Rowlin," she said, her voice clear and strong, cutting through the panic. "You marked me. I am your anchor. I am your structure." She knelt beside the thrashing wolf, placing her hand gently on his massive, feverish flank. The contact was instant, volcanic. Rowlin shuddered, a long, deep tremble that momentarily stilled his body. The pack held its collective breath. The trial of the true mate had begun. Chapter 18. The Anchor and the Storm. The moment Karen's hand touched Rowlin's feverish fur, the raging storm in the lodge subsided to a confused stillness. The silver-poisoned wolf, still huge and terrifying, stopped thrashing. His white eyes, though still clouded by agony, focused on the mate's scent now emanating directly from her skin. Karen was acutely aware of the dozens of pack eyes on her, and the massive, vulnerable beast beneath her touch. She had to suppress the urge to treat the wound. Her architectural mind knew that the internal structure was failing. She needed to stabilize the core. She leaned in, pressing her cheek against the wolf's powerful neck, her warm skin against the thick, dark fur. She began to speak, not in commands, but in low, soothing murmurs. "It's okay, Alpha. You are safe. I am here. You are not alone. Focus on my scent. Focus on the claim. Focus on the mark you left on me. You built this, Rowlin. Now let me hold the structure." The wolf responded with a low, agonizing whine that was more human than animal. Karen slipped her other arm around his neck, pulling herself onto his heaving flank. She pressed her bare torso against his fur-covered skin, creating maximum contact. She channeled her energy, her will, her love, directly into the poisoned body beneath her. The true mark on her inner thigh seemed to burn, a reciprocal anchor to his dying will. The hunter's moon, now fully visible through a high window, cast a cold, silvery light over the scene. The Alpha's suffering intensified. He began to convulse again, his body arching in pain. Karen knew what she had to do. The wolf could not be contained by ropes. It had to be seduced by the bond. She straddled the beast's flank, her legs locked around his powerful abdomen. She began to rub her body against his, slowly, deliberately, her skin slick against his fur, forcing the connection, forcing the human need for release to overcome the animal need for violence. "Come back to me, Rowlin," she whispered, her voice rough with emotion. "I need the man who claimed me. I need my Alpha." The response was staggering. The huge wolf's eyes, what a moment ago, began to bleed gold. A low, demanding groan, thick with recognition and need, erupted from his massive chest. His body, still tied, shuddered, and he began to shift, not fully, but partially. The muscles shrinking, the fur receding in patches, exposing the strong, fevered flesh beneath. He was fighting the silver and the shift by pulling on the power of his mate. Rowlin's human arm, still partially covered in black fur, reached out and grabbed her waist, pulling her impossibly tighter against his shifting body. His muzzle found the sensitive spot beneath her ear, and he licked her, a rough, intimate claim. Karen gasped, the sheer, intoxicating heat of his need overwhelming her. The physical contact was sexual, raw, and desperate. Her body responded instantly, a deep, aching throbbing beginning in the core of the true mark. She moved with him, rocking against his powerful hips, her body offering the only solace he could accept. The pack watched transfixed, as the Alpha and his mate fought the poison with passion. The sexual connection was the healing. The mate bond forged in the terror and lust of the lair was now saving his life. With a final, shattering exhale, the magnificent wolf melted away, leaving only a sweat-drenched, heavily breathing, but fully human Rowlin, naked and exhausted, wrapped around his mate. The silver wound, though still visible, had stopped spreading. Silas moved forward, his face etched with awe. The bond is real. She is the true mate. Get the healer. Now. Karen collapsed onto Rowlin's chest, her body limp with exhaustion, her mission accomplished. Her touch had brought the Alpha home. Chapter 19. The Architect of the Pack. The hours that followed were a blur of activity. The pack healers worked quickly, applying a pungent, dark poultice to Rowlin's silver wound, neutralizing the remaining poison. Karen remained by his side, her hand clasped in his grip a reassuring, if weak, constant. Drulo was brought back and settled on a low table beside them, sleeping peacefully. When Rowlin finally opened his eyes, they were the familiar, intense glacial blue, though slightly clouded by exhaustion. He looked straight at Karen, his gaze strong and unwavering. "You saved me, little architect," he rasped, his voice rough. "You brought the storm back to harbor." "You commanded me to survive, Alpha," Karen replied, managing a weak smile. "I followed orders." A soft chuckle escaped him, then a flicker of pain crossed his face. "Silas, report." Silas, standing at the foot of the bed, formally bowed. "Alpha, you are stable. The bond saved you. Keegan is dealt with. But Marcus's pack will see this as a declaration of war. They know the pup is here, and they know you have made it." Rowlin's eyes hardened. He will not get Drulo. Ever. And he will not touch this land. He looked at Karen. "What is your assessment, mate? You build structures. How do we defend the one we stand on?" The pack, gathered in the large room, watched the exchange, recognizing the powerful, immediate shift in pack dynamic. The alpha was consulting his mate, not the beta. Karen sat up, her professional mind finally engaging the problem. "We can't fight an open war, not yet. You are weak. Marcus is strong. We need to do what you do best, create an illusion of strength to buy time." She stood, retrieving a discarded quill and a piece of parchment. She began to draw, quickly, decisively, her years of architectural training kicking in. "The lodge is solid, but the perimeter is predictable. We use the creek, the dead pine hollow, and the ridge line. We lay false trails, fortified points, and a single, obvious weakness." She tapped the parchment, her finger landing on a sketched section of the forest. "We build a defense that is based on structure and deception. We use the very terrain you used to escape them. I will design the defense grid. You and Silas execute it." The pack members looked at the drawing, then back at the city girl who had just survived the Hunter's Moon shift and was now commanding the war strategy. Silas slowly nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "The structure is sound, Alpha. It plays to their predictability." Rowlin watched Karen, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. "She is a genius. A terrifying, beautiful mind genius." He extended his hand to her. "Welcome to the pack, Karen. You are not just the Alpha's mate. You are my co-alpha, my anchor, my architect." Karen took his hand, the promise of their new, dangerous life sealed in the strong, reciprocal grip. She had not only survived the mountain, she was now poised to rule it. Chapter 20. The Unbroken Line. 1 month later, the lodge hummed with a new, efficient energy. Karen's defense grid, a masterpiece of deceptive fortifications and tactical use of the environment, was complete. Marcus's scouts had tried to breach the boundary 3 times and failed, retreating each time, confused and bloodied. The threat of a full-scale siege had receded into a cautious, tense stalemate. The Black Timber Pack had their structure and their peace. Drulo, now toddling and covered in a plush, charcoal coat, was the undisputed heir. He was often found asleep on Rowlin's broad chest or tangled in the folds of Karen's rough-spun pack tunic. Karen stood by the large hearth in the Alpha Suite, a vast, timber-framed room with a fur-covered bed the size of a small car. She was wearing a simple silk robe, a blend of her city comfort and her new wilderness life. She looked out the window at the high crescent moon, a calm, gentle light after the terrifying spectacle of the Hunter's Moon. The door opened, and Rowlin entered. He had fully recovered, the silver scar a faint white line on his muscled bicep, a permanent reminder of their first night. He closed the door, his eyes immediately locking onto her. The alpha scent, the dominant musk, filled the room, now a scent of secure, domestic ownership, rather than a frantic hunt. The perimeter is secure. Marcus is retreating to lick his wounds. The pack is stable, he announced, his voice deep and satisfied. He walked toward her, peeling off his combat tunic. The structure holds, Karen confirmed, her gaze dropping to the powerful, scarred body emerging from the rough cloth. He reached her, his hands immediately pulling the silk robe open, revealing the naked, marked body beneath. His eyes found the site of the true mark, and a primal heat ignited in the glacial blue. The structure holds, but the mate needs maintenance, he murmured, his hands skimming over her hips. You have been the architect, Karen. Now be the mate. He pushed the robe from her shoulders, letting it pool around her feet. He lifted her easily, carrying her to the enormous bed. The furs were soft, warm, and smelled of him, of safety, and of long-settled love. He laid her down, his body coming down over hers, heavy, possessive, and completely familiar. I tried to send you away, to keep you safe in the city structure. You chose the chaos, he whispered, his lips grazing her collarbone. The chaos only works if there is an anchor, Alpha. I am yours, Karen replied, her hands tangling in his dark, thick hair, pulling his mouth down to hers. The kiss was the culmination of their journey, a blend of Rowlin's desperate, wolfish hunger and Karen's structured, deliberate passion. It was slow, deep, and utterly consuming, stripping away all pretense of war or danger. Rowlin moved down her body, his tongue tracing the line of her hip, lingering on the site of the true mark, a silent, absolute renewal of his claim. He affirmed his love not with words, but with the fierce, intimate physical connection that was their language. He came back up, his eyes blazing, and entered her with a controlled, shattering thrust. Karen cried out, the sound swallowed by the furs. They moved together, not in a desperate rut, but in a long, powerful, rhythmic joining that celebrated their unbreakable bond. It was an act of creation, sealing the promise of their future. A future where the Alpha's mate, the architect, would build the structure for his power, raise his heir, and always, irrevocably, be the quiet, powerful chaos he needed to survive. As they reached a combined, prolonged climax, Rowlin buried his face in her neck, his body trembling, his final, possessive groan a sound of absolute, domestic bliss. Forever, Karen. My mate. My line, he whispered, his love a tangible, heavy weight that grounded her to this wild, new world. The city architect had found her ultimate structure, the arms of her Alpha, safe, sound, and permanently claimed.